The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
TV party tonight! TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my circuit!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary dog!
Pearson and Blurnsball.
Futurama!
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premiere podcast, TV Party Tonight. I'm your host, the down in the hole brother. Running things on the deuce, from the corner to the deuce. We own this city.
Okay, there we go.
Mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, our favorite show is The Plot Against America, the final stop on our journey from the corner to the deuce, where we have been examining for the past 2 years the great works of David Simon. The Plot Against America is an American alternate history drama television miniseries created and written by David Simon and Ed Boynes, based on the 2004 novel of the same name by Philip Roth. And it aired on HBO from March 16th to April 20th of 2020, when all of us were locked down. Did you see it during the lockdown? I'll bet you didn't. The premise is The Plot Against America imagines an alternate American history told through the eyes of a working-class Jewish family in Newark, New Jersey, as they watch the political rise of Charles Lindbergh, an aviator-hero and xenophobic populist who becomes president and turns the nation towards fascism. Jesse, my brother from another mother, my hetero life mate, and my partner as we go traipsing from the corner to the deuce. How do you do?
Mark Radulich, it is good to be here for the conclusion of this long, epic journey that we've been on. You don't think it's very far from the corner to the deuce until you start. Every single journey starts with the first step, and we did it, and now we're at the last step of this journey. Mark Radulich, The Plot Against America. What were you getting me into here?
Jesse, I am painfully aware that you are a hot-blooded political rabble-rouser.
Yes, sir.
You and Ronnie Adams love the politics.
Put it in all my comics and every show that I ever watch, please.
Yes. If you're not watching Everybody Loves Raymond, you're watching The Newsroom, The West Wing.
Yes.
K Street.
Oh, yeah.
What the fuck K Street is, do you?
Nope. I assume it's right between L and also J.
K Street. It's like fucking Sesame Street. Kind of. Jesse, why do you hate politics so much?
Oh, just because I think politics is a divisive topic for just about anybody, and it continues to get
so
more
is Marvel
divisive.
fucking movies, but you don't have a problem talking about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you also see a lot of politics get involved there. So
it's like everywhere I fucking turn, man.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those things where I am not confrontational, and I just assume everybody's going to have an opinion. Everybody has an opinion about something that somebody has done, and talking about it is never going to resolve anything unless you are going to take some type of action. And most of the people that talk politics are people that I do not see take action. They just talk.
Sure.
And that unfortunately is just like, put your money where your mouth is, or just let's talk about something fun. And that's a lot of times where I land. Doesn't mean that I can't appreciate a political drama such as this, because I was hooked. This was a good show. And there are other shows out there that revolve around politics. We talked about Show Me a Hero. Loved that show. It's a great miniseries. And this is up there. This was really good.
In a lot of ways, We Own This City had political elements to it. The third, fourth, and fifth season of The Wire were very politically engaging.
Yeah. I don't know if David Simon doesn't have a show that kind of avoided politics at all. I mean, mostly
The Corner.
It's well, I mean, that was a lot about drug use, but also people trying to get. I'd say that is probably the least.
Yeah,
programs.
I mean, if there's politics, in it, it's kind of in the ether. They don't deal with it directly. Not like a show like this, or even The Wire, where you get to see sort of the political machinations of how Baltimore runs and the drug war and all that.
Right.
I don't know if you know this about me or not. We've been friends for many years now, and you've gotten to know me very well, but you might not know this. I'm confrontational.
I had no idea. All these years, how did you get away with me not knowing that?
Yeah. I may have gotten in people's faces once or twice. I may have said things that were controversial on this very network. The very same. I'm also a little sarcastic.
A little bit.
No, my dad has always been autistic. No, my dad has always been he has always been someone that liked to engage in a sharing of ideas. I think I've talked about how he used to have the Jehovah's Witnesses over, and he would, as an atheist, he would engage them in Bible study so that he could tell them that, well, this is a very interesting book and there are some interesting ideas that are worth discussing. You're never going to change my mind. And eventually he wore them out and they gave up. That's my dad's great claim to fame. He wore out the Jehovah's Witnesses. They were like, this is not worth it. That's the house I grew up in. So it's like, I meet people all the time. Like, oh, there's two things you don't talk about: politics and religion. It was all we fucking talked about in my house.
Oh boy.
So you wonder, like, why these many years later I start a podcast where all I do is engage people in ideas. And I've learned over the years how to engage people so that they'll share their ideas. And you can be confrontational. You can, like, you and I don't always agree. In fact, many times we don't agree. But I don't think in either case when we were maybe pulling each other's junk, have there been a case where I was disrespectful to you or you to me because of an idea you held, because of a belief that you held. Right. I think famously, and I always cite this as an example of this is how you argue with somebody. Us discussing Minions, cuties, where you and I were not going to change each other's minds, but you were interested in why I was defending the movie. And I was interested in sharing that with you because you would at least have an open mind and I wouldn't feel attacked.
Sure.
And it was the very model of civil discourse. Robert and I, one of the things that make Damn You Hollywood what it is our ability to have a discussion, have a disagreement, and not think less of each other because of it. We just don't always share the same ideas. And that's how I grew up. I grew up talking politics. I grew up talking religion. I grew up sharing ideas. I grew up debating, and none of it was ever to be taken personally. On my personal journey, I stopped doing a lot of that because the very same things that you brought up. Too many times people are not able to disengage from a political or religious conversation without taking things personally.
Oh yeah. And I'm like the guy that doesn't want to offend anybody, like at all. And my
and I'm the guy that offends
views,
everybody, so we're good together.
I don't think a lot of my personal views are going to be offensive or anything like that. But what I'm saying is, like, somebody may be offended by some political view that I have, and there's no reason for me to put them in that position. Because what am I gaining and what are they gaining? That's a lot of the reason why I avoid it.
Living in Florida, especially working in correctional mental health, I would run into a lot of very conservative-minded people, and it was interesting to hear their ideas. It was interesting and then again, this is also Florida, so, and this because you're from like the West Virginia part of Ohio. You get a lot of religious people, very like devout Christians, and they would talk, and it's like you engage them in what you think is civil discourse, and shortly therein, it becomes a lobbying effort.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's not an exchange of ideas anymore. It is, we say it on Damn You Hollywood, is they want to hear their ideas coming out of your mouth. They're not looking for discourse. They're not looking for conversation and intercourse, Jesse. They are
right.
They are looking for agreement. And when you stop agreeing with them, it becomes a fight. And now and it's one thing to fight to get a law passed. It's one thing to, change the course of a nation through legislation and, in debate. It's a whole other thing to argue with the idiot nurse in the office next to you about abortion. Neither one of you is going to change anything. Neither one of you is going to solve. And it kind of goes to what you were saying.
Right.
Neither one of you is going to fucking solve anything. Why are we doing this? Why are we hurting?
Right.
Why are we hurting each other's feelings and causing conflict in a situation that isn't going to bear fruit? It's not going to amount to anything.
Yeah, there's not going to be a resolution here.
I started my podcast journey in 2006. Believe it or not. And I started with I took my blog that I was writing. It was progressive conservatism. And it was very much like, I was very interested after Bush's reelection about finding the middle ground in political discourse. I'm still interested in that. I'm alone. Everybody decided to pick a side, either the Jets or the Giants, the Mets or the Yankees, the Islanders or the Rangers, and then there's me in the middle, like I'm the New Jersey Devils. Like, ugh, get the fuck out of here. I'm just a lonely man in the middle. God, that's more true today than ever. And I was very interested in what were the best ideas from both sides, both progressives and conservatives, Republicans and Democrats. And I wanted to put those ideas out there in a blog that was very much common sense based. And that's how progressive conservatism came to be. And, I worked on that blog for about 2 years. And through that blog is how I found Blog Talk Radio. And I took the blog and I turned it into a podcast. And it was very Rush Limbaugh structured in that I had a stack of articles and I would just kind of read the articles and comment on them. And then John came on and then we started making chicken noises and we were off to the races. But the idea of the show was basically to talk about politics from a very middle of the road, common sense point of view. And I had listeners, I had people that were interested, but because I didn't take a hard line side either way, other than I was with John McCain, bomb, 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 Iran. Yeah, I was very hawkish back then. Other than that particular stance, I very much kind of looked at politics like, hey, this isn't an either or here. There's a middle of the road that needs to be examined. And very often what I would find is people weren't interested in the middle of the road. They were interested in their side winning.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about this on the show before about people are not necessarily interested in, I think I talked about it with Robert, this idea of people are not interested in government intervention unless it's a thing they don't like. Then they want the government very interested, very involved. If it's a thing they want to see, if it's the side that wants drugs made illegal, boy, do they want government intervention then. If it's a side that wants abortion illegal, they're very much interested in government intervention. If you're the side that wants to defund the police, you're very interested in in government intervention. It's like, ugh, I can't handle it. So all that to say, when we get to the plot against America, and it's a very political show. They discuss politics, but in the way that you and I are talking about. It's dinner table stuff. The lead actor in this, Morgan Spector, who plays Herman Levin, I both sympathized and hated him because here's a guy who's like, what's going on in the world? I have opinions about it. I think it's this Charles Lindbergh guy, he's no good for the America. Like this is not happening for the Jews. This is a very bad thing. Fascism never works out. And it's like everyone around him, please shut up. Just stop talking. How about them Brooklyn Dodgers? Anything, and stop talking about this. And it's like, no, we'll get into it with the show. But there's some scenes that are almost I almost had to fast forward through them because they're so cringy. Because we all know that one guy who can't read the room.
Oh yeah,
and he's just like, I have to, no. It's my most favorite idiot thing that we do in this country is the person that stands, I have freedom of speech, and proceeds to yell his opinions in the middle of like a crowded area where everyone looks like they're about 2 seconds away from beating him with a bat and a pipe. I get it. I get the freedom of speech thing, but like, read a room. Time and a place. And that's a lot of this show. So let's get into, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to comment on there, but I did want to share something with you and get your opinion on this. HBO announced November 8th of 2018 that it had ordered a 6-episode miniseries based on Philip Roth's novel, The Plot Against America, written by David Simon, and Ed Burns, and executive produced by Simon, Burns, and Roth alongside all the people that they work with on The Wire and shit. Simon had read the novel in 2004 when it came out, I believe, but thought it politically irrelevant. Though approached by Tom Rothman in 2013 to adapt it for television, he declined. He decided to take on the project, and this is the point. He decided to take on the project in the aftermath of the 2016 U.S. election, Jesse, in which Donald Trump was elected U.S. president, saying that Roth's novel had proven perversely allegorical. And approaching his longtime collaborator, Ed Burns, with whom he had worked on The Wire, Generation Kill, etc., etc. Events such as the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville influenced the adaptation. I don't want to spend too long on this, but I think to discuss this show and not discuss the Trump election and what was going on in this country at the time, we would be missing an element of what made this show politically relevant. So, you know, Robert and I called that election. We called it for Trump well before the U.S. the networks did. And I said at the time, I said, the thing about this country is most of us ham and eggers, most of us middle-class Americans are willing to go along to get along until we're made uncomfortable, until our way of life is in any way threatened. And then, because we're not always the best educated, we're not the most thoughtful, and we don't think deeply about things, we get very attracted to the idea of it has to be the other's fault. And then, as Tommy Lee Jones said in Men in Black, the individual is smart, the groups are stupid.
Right.
And so, in a world where the middle class is rapidly deteriorating, and jobs that you can get, which we talked about with The Wire season 2, jobs that uneducated people, non-college educated people could get, are going away. And, more and more we're seeing robotization, we're seeing mechanization, we're seeing jobs just go extinct. You and I talked about this with Black Mirror, and it came up again with artificial intelligence. I think we talked about it with the creator, that people are rapidly losing their ability to support themselves and support their families by working. The world is rapidly changing, and it's scary. Change is scary in and of itself. Now imagine the promise of, if you work hard and make money, you'll be able to raise a family and live comfortably. And that's the American dream. And that dream is getting away from most people. And they don't have the wherewithal, and they don't have the emotional maturity to go, or they don't do the research about, like, okay, well, I get that this country still makes stuff. They just make it with robots. They don't make it with people. And so instead they go, it's the Mexicans' fault. It's the Chinese's fault. It's this person's fault. It's that person's fault. It's never my fault. And then here comes Donald Trump. Okay, Donald Trump is a successful businessman, and he's going, this country used to, we used to make shit in this country. And everyone's going, I think that, I said that, I heard that in The Wire once. He's going, hey, all those people that don't look like us, they took our jobs. They took our jobs. They made your life uncomfortable. They made it, harder for you to raise a family and take care of them. It's all their fault. And you're going, I think that. My friend thinks that. We think that. Yep. We heard our thoughts coming out of his mouth, and he's successful. He must be right. And they all went to vote for him, and he became president. That's the fucking story of Donald Trump. Good, bad, or indifferent. And I'm not giving an opinion. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to say that's how we got Donald Trump as president. He said the thing people were thinking, and enough people were thinking it, and enough people heard him say it. They go, that guy, that's the guy. That's what the plot against America is about.
Yeah. And the thing is that the situation that we have in this show is this takes place back in the 40s. Hatred's a little bit more on the surface than it is. It's still here in today's day and age. It's a little bit different when you can just do it all online and behind a mask. But in the 40s, you were doing it physically behind a mask sometimes.
Or a hood.
Or a hood. Yeah. That's so it, fueling and adding fuel to that hate is essentially what happens in this show. Now, granted, it's with a very, oh my goodness, what's the best word? A very civil political face where it's like, oh, a facade. That's the word. Where it's, no, that's not what we're doing here. We respect the Jews. We respect everybody. We don't want violence. We don't want this, but sometimes it's the inactions, the things that aren't said that are allowing the groups to kind of rally behind what is going on, these hate groups, finding and identifying with that person. Now, the thing is that the person that got into political power here, Charles Lindbergh, he was also in bed with a lot of people who were racist. And when you look at Trump and you compare the two, I mean, really, that's what Lindy was, right? Successful businessman, a hero, a genuine hero that rallied white America.
White America!
Rallied these people. And, it's scary how, this was a story that was very relevant to what was going on in 2016 and what I felt was, just bubbling all over the place. And it was scary too. I want to talk real quick and I know we're going to talk about the characters here, but one thing that I had a tough time. I want to say tough time. A lot of times when I'm watching, you were talking about our father figure here. What was his name again?
Levin.
Goodness, I had it. Thank you. Herman Levin.
Herman Levin. Yeah.
So he very agitated.
The Jewiest of Jewy names, by the way. Why not just call him like? Why didn't I just call him like Igor Moishowitz?
Jewy McJewerson.
Hey, bagels with lox McGee. All right, maybe not the McGee part.
Bagels with lox. Oh man,
I can say that I'm Jewish.
Yes, see, folks.
I have political. I am. What is it? John Turturro, who's fucking the rabbi in this?
Yeah, John Turturro. Rabbi Lionel Bingelsdorf.
Yeah, I'm the John Turturro of this podcast. I can make those jokes. I can give political cover because I am in fact a turncoat Jew.
So with Herman, I identify a lot of what he's going through. I'm not vocal like he is, clearly,
because you're being politically persecuted.
No, what I'm saying is that I when I say identify, what I mean is it's like I question myself, like, what would it take as a father to get so upset and so agitated to become this politically involved? And sometimes I think to myself, like, yeah, I haven't been oppressed. That's probably why. I wasn't. I would say that if that was a factor in my life, then absolutely I would be a very political person. I would want something to change. This is in America. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead.
I gotta jump in here because here's the thing. There's a conflict going on between Israel and Palestine right now, and if you're on TikTok seems to have taken the side of the Palestinians. I'm not getting involved with any of that. But I will say that the Jewish experience has been one of diaspora. It's been one of persecution. It's been one of forced relocation. Robert and I talked about this. Everyone likes to point to the U.S. and say everything that happens here is the worst thing that ever happened in history. And we go, really? Because if you heard of the rape of Nanking, have you have you heard of what happens in these other fucking countries? None of it is good, but it's not all bad either. And so I say, with the Jewish experience, it's people trying to find a home and live and just be left alone. And every once in a while, in history, the world around them bubbles up and looks at them and says, it's all your fault. And, the group of Jews going, the fuck? Like, how? And I know that happens to other groups of people too. Blacks experience that. They're just, again, just trying to live their life, trying to get past the generational trauma of, slavery and second-class citizenry and all of that. And they're just like, we're just trying to live our lives here, just trying to raise families. And every once in a while, the world bubbles up, looks at them and goes, it's all your fault. And then it was the Mexicans' turn, it just goes on and on. But to go back to what you're saying, I just needed to point that out there, that like, it is, if everyone's going along to get along, and sorry, I just got a message from Alexis. I think I'm in trouble. So everyone's just going along to get along. A lot of stuff, they just kind of go, oof, that's uncomfortable, but I'll deal with it. But as like the fabric of society gets like torn apart, then yes, all of this stuff becomes very important, and you become very vocal. And it's a lot about a fear. That a fear that the government's going to turn on you, your neighbors are going to turn on you, and suddenly it's all your fault again.
Yeah. I think that watching this show, just watching Herman as a family man, and granted he was very, very passionate about what should be happening in America and what America stands for versus what it isn't. And that really affected his family. I think that is a lot of what this focuses on, is him and his reaction to what is going on in the outside world and how it impacts his family. And I think that's really what spoke to me when we were watching this series.
So real quick, just to kind of give a synopsis of what happens here, so people understand. So Charles Lindbergh beats Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and this is very true. People didn't want to go, and America didn't want to be involved in the Second World War. It ends up becoming God's work. We're freeing the world of tyranny is sort of the thing here. Like, no one wants to go to war. No one wants to be engaged in Europe. I mean, you got to remember, a lot of America's history is one of isolationism. It's let Europe tear itself apart. That part of the world, that whole other second half of the world, Europe, Africa, Asia, let them fight it out. We're over here. And, there's that, I can't remember what the policy was, but essentially it was, it was America will deal with North America and South America, and that's about it. Let the rest of the world fucking do whatever. And the sentiment was from a lot of people is like, what happens over there doesn't affect us. Like, that's over there. And there was very much a campaign in this country of isolationism. It was like, if you elect me president, I will keep us out of the war. I will keep your people safe. I will keep, your family safe, because we won't get involved in foreign conflicts. And then there's then there was the opposing argument, the argument that essentially won, which was, that shit's going to come here too. Eventually the Nazis will come for us. I can't remember the poet. It was just like, the first they came for this, first they came for that, and then they came for me, and there was nobody left. There was very much if we let the spread of Hitler and fascism go, they'll never be satisfied. It'll never be enough. There's a joke I want to make here, but I've been told to cut the misogyny and the jokes against women down 25%. So let's move on. they're never, it was the Neville Chamberlain thing in World War One. It was just like, well, we'll just give them Poland, it'll be fine. We'll do this and it'll be fine. And then suddenly you're involved in World War One. It's the end of the world.
Right.
And then it was so nice we did it twice. And there was people going, maybe the first time giving in to the Germans was a bad idea, but this time it should work. And the other half going, what are you, a bunch of fucking idiots? Like this never works. Giving in to Ronald Reagan's thing about don't negotiate with terrorism was wildly informed by the first half of the 20th century, because every time it worked out poorly. But in this alternate history, isolationism wins the day. And so for the promise of staying out of World War II, Charles Lindbergh gets elected president. And there's this undercurrent of distrust of Jews because they are the other. But it was kept tampered down, and it starts to bubble up under the rise of Charles Lindbergh as president. And they get political cover by John Turturro, who's this very famous rabbi who ends up marrying Winona Ryder's character. And when we get to the pictures, boy, do I have to talk about her performance in this. And they both basically are pushing an integration policy, like, hey, let's send Jewish boys to farms in the Midwest because we want more integration. Yeah, there was a melting pot. We want more of a melting pot. Yeah. There's conversations in the show about ghetto Jews, and there's Sandy, who is the teenage boy that goes to live on the farm and comes back, voices the argument about the world's bigger than the Jewish sections of Newark, New Jersey. There's a argument about Jews being narrow-minded in this era, this section of the world. And it was like, no, open up, expand, integrate. There's something to be said for this. And then the opposing argument essentially is, and then we're no longer Jews.
Yeah.
We completely lose our identity. The thing about being Jewish is that it's not just a religion, it's also a race, it's culture. And when you push integration, when you push Americanization, which is not bad things in and of themselves, you also give way to the possibility of you losing your identity entirely. Imagine you're a family of immigrants, Jesse, and you came from wherever the fuck you guys are from, and you have your cultural traditions, and then you get here and you're like, well, stop doing it. And then a generation or two later, because you didn't teach your kids and they didn't teach their kids, and so it's gone now. It's just gone. I know that happened with my family. A lot of American customs were adopted and foreign customs were done away with, and I couldn't tell you the first fucking thing about my family. When your culture becomes Black Friday shopping, there's a problem. And that's the conflict of the show. So anyway, over the course of the show, the violence ramps up. And initially there's talk of move to Canada, but only if you can only move to Canada if you've got money, or there was some other thing about it. Or
family.
Yeah. There's a nephew who's kind of a ne'er-do-well and a layabout, and he's sort of shiftless, criminal type. And he decides that he would like to kill Germans, so he joins the Canadian Army and goes to war. And the show kind of revolves around his story and what happens to him once he gets blown. He makes a stupid decision, gets his leg blown off, and ends up coming back home. And he makes good, but by the end of the show, he kind of reminded me of how you started. It was like he went to war, he went to fight, he tried to do something, and he lost his leg over it. And then you have Herman, who was like, I'm going to stay and I'm going to keep my family. We're not going to go to Canada. If we go to Canada, we're running away, and then the bullies win. So we must stay and fight the bullies. But all he does is argue about it. There's a great scene in one of the last episodes of the show where they go to Washington, D.C., and it is found out by the hotel that they're staying in that they're Jews. And at this point, people are, politely hostile to Jews. And so they are ejected from the hotel. And in one of the cringier scenes of the show, Herman's like, I'm not fucking leaving. I'm an American citizen and I paid. We gave you your money back. We don't fucking want you. And he's like, well, that's not acceptable to me. And then the cops show up. And, it's not 2023, so they don't beat the shit out of him. They give him a fair warning. And he's like challenging the cops, and they're like, leave. We're really running out of patience with you. Black people are watching this going, I wish we had it like that, man. That guy had all kinds of chances. But and they force him out, and it comes to a conflict between him and the nephew, where the nephew's like, all you do is fucking talk. You just argue and complain and whine, and it's as good as doing nothing and allowing this all to happen. We're in the place we're in right now, where Jews are being killed and businesses are being burnt to the ground because you fucking people, all you did was talk. I at least went over there and fought and lost my leg over it. And they get in a fist fight and he goes through a table.
I mean, what makes that scene even better, just to kind of throw this out there, when I was watching that scene, I don't think he probably said anything about the fact that he was involved in Lindbergh's plane going down. Like, I'm certain that that's top secret, but he was involved in the plot with the Canadians and the British to bring down Lindbergh's plane. And like, as far as action goes, like, Alvin's probably done the most of anybody, So
real quick, I gotta talk about the John Turturro and Winona Ryder. So again, they play prominent Jews. They are sort of like they are the face of prejudice against Jews, but they are integrationists. They are pushing an integrationist policy, and so like the government kind of get away with like light racism because the Jews give them cover. And then things come to a head, and never let it be said that they won't eventually come for you. Like, you think there's a parlance, I can't say it even jokingly, but house N-word. So it's like, oh well, I'm in the house, I'm good. The white, master likes me, until they don't. You're all useful idiots is the term. And so that's what ends up happening, is that eventually things get so bad, and the hatred of Jews in this country gets to a fever pitch, that the government turns on them too. They have no allies. Stuff with Winona Ryder at the end, like, they're gonna come for me. And so you have forced relocation of Jews under the guise of integration, where first it's just putting teenage boys on farms, and then it's moving whole families to rural ass parts of America where they don't have synagogues, they don't have temples, they got nothing. They got, Ku Klux Klan and cornfields. That's what we got for you. And oh no, shock of all shocks, Jews die. They get killed. Children are orphaned. This actually happens in the show. Yeah. It all comes to a head, and I'm gonna let you respond to this, and because I have some thoughts about the show, but there's an election. So Charles Lindbergh is gone, and there's a special election, and then there's a new election to elect a new president, and it's left ambiguous as to who wins. There's some allusions to, and I don't know if you know this, Jesse, but in a couple of our elections, there may have been voter fraud. Yeah. I'm not saying which ones, and I'm not saying if it was true. It's not for me to say. I wasn't there. But in the last, I don't know, all of them elections, one side accused the other side of voter fraud, of wholesale throwing ballots away, or creating machines that, as the Simpsons joked about, turned your vote for one guy to the other guy. And they stole the election because elections are as easily stealable as jewelry in a jewelry store. Cool. Not here to discuss conspiracy theories, but they actually show you like them stealing ballot boxes and like chucking ballots in the fire.
They got fire going and they're throwing ballots into the fire.
And then there's like a voting machine. They're like walking in a way like, where are you going with that? It's like, it's broken. How? What's broken about it? I don't hear you, Jewish man. But they don't tell you who wins the election, and the show ends. Here's my.
It ends with the radio still on, and fucking Herman right with his ear up against it.
Yeah,
there is so many like just parallels to media
Mm-hmm.
and the public in this thing that you could see amongst that whole election thing as well. I mean, yes, clearly there is a lot of talk about the politics that are going on, but my goodness,
Mm-hmm.
is the media a driving force just like today? But go
Mm-hmm.
ahead, man. You were getting ready to say something.
I just I want to give my kind of final thoughts on the show at large. And then we can get into your picture show. This is not my favorite David Simon show. This is a little too soapy for me.
Okay.
For my taste. I get. Let me preface it by saying, and I have to be very careful here. This is probably the most like cautious I've ever been about talking about a show. I got into a discussion with Sarah about Trump, and she was the typical anti-Trump person. Trump is the worst thing ever. Trump is evil. Trump is stupid. Trump is, every negative adjective you can think of. And he's just the worst thing ever. And the country's never been as bad as it's been now. And I went, well, fucking slavery. Reconstruction, anyone? All right, whatever. And I kind of had to point that out to her. I was like, every fucking generation says this. And everyone says this about every president. Because I'll tell you, all 8 years of Obama, all I fucking heard was how bad he was. He was a Muslim. We're going to live in Sharia law. That was my favorite one. This country... This country can't maintain its regular Judeo-Christian traditions, but we're all going to live under Sharia law because the Muslim from Hawaii was president.
Right.
Sorry, from Kenya. That was my other favorite one with Obama.
Right, he wasn't born here. I forgot about that.
Right, yeah. So when we're not stealing elections, we're also putting into office foreigners. This country's mad stupid, yo. Anyway, so 8 years of hearing that Obama was a Muslim from Kenya that was going to put us all under Sharia law. 8 years of Bush is a fascist and we're all going to get drafted into the Iraq War. Jesse, were you drafted into the Iraq War?
No, I made it, man. They did not draft me. I
they
could
didn't call your number?
You never know. They did not.
Funny, none of the people my age were drafted either into the non-draft professional army that Donald Rumsfeld fucking said on television. Easily, you could look it up. He said, I don't believe in a draft army. But I can't tell you how many times in the 8 years Bush the fascist was president that I had to fucking hear people talk about how we're all going to get drafted and sent to the Iraq to die.
Right. Whatever was spoon-fed to them, they're going to reiterate it. Right. Go ahead.
And then before that, I got 8 years of Clinton's a rapist. And Hillary Clinton's a murderer, and and Al Gore invented the internet. And before that, and it just goes on and on. So when we get to Trump, and it's like, oh my God, he's the most evil thing ever. I'm just like, Reagan, Clinton, shut up, you idiots. And there was a part of me that just kind of wanted to see what Trump would do because I'm a bit of the, I like the bit of the Schadenfreude.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Let's see if we put Ronald McDonald in the White House and see what happens. Because it's so hard to get anything through Congress, especially as polarized as it is. When there's so much political red tape and machinery going on. And I always use this. It's a dumb thing, but it's the best way I can explain this. It's like, the killing puppies fucking bill. It's like I write a bill and it says we shouldn't kill puppies. Well, who the fuck is going to vote against that? In the killing puppies bill is also funding for Bridge to Nowhere and funding for give every congressman a Cadillac. And, it's like a whole bunch of shit in there. They're like, who would vote for this? Well, you can't vote against it because then you're voting for killing puppies.
Right.
So politics, everyone. So I can't get myself too excited about stuff like this anymore. And all of this to say that I think in order for you to enjoy beyond the soapiness of the show, the plot against America is your, some might say, irrational anxiety about Trump as president. And so you see the show and you go, oh, I'm very much into the show because I'm very much against Trump. And in this show, the allegory for Trump is Charles Lindbergh, and it's like, okay, here's my problem. I don't fucking care. Whether
Mhm.
it's Trump or Sleepy Joe or, you know, the Muslim from Kenya or the actor cowboy or the peanut farmer or that handsome fellow who we shot in the head in Dallas or the guy that drinks cider from a fucking jug. This goes on and on, Jesse.
I hear you.
Whoever it ends up being, you know, I just can't get myself excited in a negative way about what's going to happen with the presidency. And there's every woman listening to this is going, but abortion. And every fucking fucking president, there's always something.
Yeah.
Both sides, politics, you know, Democrats and Republicans to one degree or another. So it was hard for me. Like, the show wants you to get excited. The show is sort of stoking that anxiety about, but Trump and, you know, and fascism and what has this country wrought. And I'm just not there. So I watched it. You know, it's funny, you know, Robert, who's kind of over David Simon to begin with, was like, what a chore that was to watch, huh? And I didn't want to say anything at the time because I wanted to talk about it with you, but it kind of was. Like, it's not that I didn't like it. I think it's a well-made show, but that's the thing. It's a well-made drama about a subject I can't begin to get excited about. Because everybody thought Trump was not going to win the second time around, and Robert and I was like, he's so gonna, because it's hard to unseat a sitting president in their second term, to get from getting a second term. And then COVID happened, and COVID changed all that, you know.
Yep.
But that's what it takes. It takes a war or a plague, you know, or a third part, or a viable third party candidate. You know, I can't remember who fucked up. It wasn't Ralph Nader. I can't remember which third party candidate like pulled votes off of Bush that he didn't get a second term. It ended up going to Clinton. But that's what happened. It was like the one third party guy that ran and pulled votes off of Bush, and so Clinton got elected, and then he happened to be in the White House when the economy turned around, and so he got credit for it, and he got a second term, but not like he wouldn't have anyway. You know, Bush, it was hard to unseat him. We were in the middle of a war, but he was also a popular president at the time. There was no fucking way you were going to unseat Obama. And had COVID not happened, we'd be sitting in this, you know, the second half of Trump's presidency instead of Joe Biden. You know, Joe Biden got elected because basically we were in the middle of a plague, and everyone just sort of went, well, let's get the first guy out of office. Maybe the second guy will end the plague. Because that's how people think. Anyway, I've thrown everything at you. This was verbal bukkake, and you're in now like the verbal semen spiderweb. So I've said a lot. What do you think about the show? What I've said, life, the universe, and everything.
All right, yeah. You mentioned how soapy it was. I kind of get that. This to me feels, although I was seeing the parallels that they were trying to pull with Trump and all that, but I feel like it was very much a story about this family and how politics, especially the fact that, you know, the sister ends up getting involved with somebody at a position in power in politics, and how
it's basically like a huge Uncle Tom.
Yeah, it's and how it affects people. This is, you've got this husband and wife. The husband clearly a very driven man, very passionate man when it comes to politics. A wife who is very fearful and very understanding the age that they live in, and how you know, don't go past a certain street because, you know, your life could be in danger just because of the race you are. And it just continues to snowball as things progressively get worse in the White House. And you watch all of these plans be made to try and better things in America, but you don't know what exactly is happening behind the scenes. And that's kind of one of the brilliant parts of this series. You don't know who to trust. Remember, you talked about going to Washington D.C. and there was this guy standing outside of the hotel,
Mhm.
and I'm sitting there thinking like, this guy is just a plant or
They're
somebody
gonna
knows.
they're gonna end up in a saw trap.
They know the Jews have come to the neighborhood, so we've got to have somebody out there to watch them. So let's find this guy. You know, he's bald, and you're like, this guy is going to be not their friend. And they go about Washington D.C. with this guy as a guide. He ends up talking them into becoming the guide. And then at the restaurant, when somebody gets up into Herman's face about some type of political issue, this bald guy stands up for him, which is great. It stands up for Herman. So there's always kind of like these swerves. I didn't know if the first lady, you know, Lindbergh's wife, was actually going to be somebody we could trust, is just using, as she's also involved in some type of racism, but that's not the case. And at the end of this, she's asking for peace. She's one of the ones that has a level head. And as much as she had that, you know, that friendly facade, you wondered, okay, this is a politician. Can you trust them? Can the words that come out of their mouth be something that you can actually put stock into? So it was, you know, watching this family go through all this, and you don't just stop with the mother and father. A lot of series would just do that. You watch these kids have to grow up, watch their family. I mean, you talk about your dad. I mean, has your dad, I know, is fairly vocal about politics now, and I don't follow much of what he does.
Really? You haven't watched his TikTok?
No, I haven't, and I know he's got one.
You're missing out.
But as a kid, as a child, I mean, were there frightening situations, kind of like what these kids were running into with your dad?
No, my dad has hands the size of the fucking Undertaker. Nobody fucked with him.
I mean, well, okay. Aside from that, so there was never a situation where you were just like, okay, Dad, calm down.
So I would say internally, there were. I don't know if you know this about me and how I present myself, but I can be kind of loud and obnoxious.
Okay.
It doesn't come unnaturally. There were just loud, vicious fucking arguments in my family. And I don't mean like my mom yelling at my dad and throwing a roast beef sandwich at him because he didn't like wash the dishes or some shit. I mean like we'd be at, you know, big fat Italian dinner at my grandparents' house, you know, with the seafood pasta and, you know, and whatnot, and big lasagna. And there's my, you know, grandfather, the size of Jabba the Hutt, just screaming about who the fuck knows. And my dad yelling back at him, and the women in the middle going, why does everyone yell at in this family? You know, and then I got older, and then I joined in the chorus of yelling because, you know, I learned that that's how you communicate your intelligent ideas, was just scream it at the top of your lungs.
Scream them? Okay. All right.
You know, and I remember one Thanksgiving, my Aunt Pat is just like, why do we have to talk at the table? Why can't we just eat? Because it always devolved into a screaming match.
Right.
Because again, and I'm joking about it, making light of it, but like just no one knew how to have a civil discourse. It was always, and to this day, like it was so funny because the first time I brought like my ex to my parents' house for dinner, my dad, you know, because this is how I grew up, and my dad and I's love language is to scream at each other's faces, and about politics or movies or anything.
Oh, geez.
And so we're having a vocal discussion, and the ex at the time thinks like, oh, is this bad? Do we need to leave? And I'm like, no, that's how my dad and I talk. And I remember another situation where, so like her parents are not particularly vocal. I mean, like they very much like to hear themselves talk. You know, they have lovely ideas, and their ideas are the best ideas from the freshest fruit. You know, the freshest fruit from the most healthy tree. And they and no one ever argues with them about it. They just sort of say whatever, they just dribble whatever nonsense comes out of their mouth, and it's just widely accepted that the sky is green, and you know, and the air is made of, you know, plum pudding. Fine, it's what they said. And nobody argued with them about it. So here comes my dad, who will not accept that the air is green, and you know, and the air is made of plum pudding, and the sky is green. He's like, it's clearly blue, and I'm going to scream it until you believe me. And so my father-in-law ex-father-in-law, having never been challenged ever in his life, is now yelling back at him. And my wife goes, "Stop them. They're yelling at each other." And to me, this is like watching television. It's just like, oh, this is what I'm used to. And I didn't think anything of it. But she's like, oh my God, they're ruining Thanksgiving. And both my father and my father-in-law look at Melissa and go, it's fine. We're just talking.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Melissa and how she felt is probably a good representation of what these kids felt when they watched Alvin and Herman sit there, and it would start out so polite, and then one of them is accusing the other of something, or something. So and so.
I gotta tell you a story. So because what you're getting to is finally Alvin has enough of Herman, and it's just like, what do I fucking gave up a leg to save this country. You've done nothing. That's the spark that causes the fight. So my ex-father-in-law has he worked for a Fortune 500 company. I think I've talked about it before. And then he was given assignments where he was basically running a division of said corporation, where he was basically the president of this sub-corporation. And they traveled the world, and he had assignments in foreign countries, and he was a big to-do. Okay. So for easy conversation and the sake of the story, he's a CEO.
Okay.
And there's my father, who I wouldn't say that he was blue collar, but he worked for the telephone company for a zillion years. He's never run anything. I think the closest he's ever gotten, he was like a manager of a department. But that's as far as he ever got as far as leadership goes. But my father, always a member of the proletariat, and a revolutionary, was like, just had these very, especially at this point, because like he was a Republican, but everyone was a Republican during the Reagan administration. Years later, he's very liberal, very left, very Democrat. And so he's in this very Republican, very rich house with this guy who is, for all intents and purposes, a CEO. And there's my father, dribbling idiot that he is, and goes, he's got grapes in his hands and wine in the other, and his beret on. Very French. And he says, all CEOs are crooks.
Oh,
and the piano stopped. And the piano stopped playing. And tumbleweeds blew through.
Dude,
someone did a spit take. And like in unison, this group of pod people that I was, that I was related to for a moment of my life, turned and looked at him and were like, Brian's a CEO, right? And my father was like, I said what I said. My opinion still stands, and I'm in the middle of this going,
like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
I mean, and it's opinions like that. It's people who have opinions like that that just decide to voice them because they want to voice their opinion.
I made a joke about my dad being autistic. I'm probably closer to the truth than that, because like, you want to talk about no fucking filter.
Oh boy.
Like, again, Herman, read the room. Dad, read a room.
Yeah.
Here, let me say to the man's house who invited me in to share his home and his dinner with me, and let me tell him he's a crook. Why don't you just stick your dick in his mouth while you're at it?
And this and that effect, obviously, it clearly affected the night. It impacted how things were going to go.
Yeah.
And just the thing is that you watch Sandy and the other boy Philip sit there and have to deal with their dad, Philip being the younger kid, watching them try to understand. As Sandy starts to have these political beliefs too, and of course is at odds with his dad, and it's just like there's no moment of peace. Can we please enjoy ourselves?
Can we please talk about the Dodgers? Can we please talk about the Dodgers before they move to Los Angeles?
Right. I don't know how many times in this series the wife is like, okay, kids, it's time to get up from the table, because she knows the shit's about to hit the fan. Yep. And she just does not want to have to deal with it. I am that guy. I am that girl. I am that lady, because I don't want to deal with it. I will
picture
say
you
that
in your like your flower dress and fucking apron.
time for bed, kids. Yeah, I am so like anti having to deal with that bullshit. I think I've mentioned my stepfather, very politically vocal,
Mhm.
you know, very has opinions that we don't agree with here at this house. Okay, we'll just put it that way. There's some things that come out of his mouth where we're just like, okay, well, we're not going to confront him, let him have his opinion, and we'll go about our day, because that's the way this is going to go.
Right.
Used to go over to mom and my stepfather's house, I don't know, pretty regularly when we first moved back to Marietta, to go eat for Sunday dinner. And that lasted probably about, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 months maybe. And, you know, it was, you know, why aren't your boys eating dinner? Well, they don't like cow tongue. I'm sorry. It's, you know, that's just the way my boys are. And you'd have to hear about that
So
for about,
picky.
if he don't eat, you know, he's not going to get up from that table. I wouldn't let him get up from that table. It's just like, okay, well, we won't be back for a little while. Thank you very much. So it's, but politics was a big thing that was always discussed at that dinner table. And mom would finally come up and say, okay, we don't need this, because she knows it's just going to evolve into some kind of either a shouting match or everybody patting each other on the back with stupid opinions that, again, aren't going to change a damn thing because you're not doing anything with them.
So I talked about the Italian side of my family. Let me tell you about the Jewish side of my family. Okay?
Oh, okay.
Uncle Bob, dearly departed, deceased Bob Winchell. So there's my father. No filter, all autism, very, very politically left. And he just says, everyone's a communist and a homosexual. Like something that fucking
just broad and generalization.
Yeah. This country is made up of all homosexuals and communists. All right, Christopher.
Right. Okay.
And then there's and he would say this to Bob, and Bob's answer to everything. And honestly, I'm getting to be almost 50 years old, but a lot happened to me, especially the last 2 years. And I have become my uncle. I have not become my father. I have become my uncle, because the urge to scream "who fucking cares" over and over and over again. Let me tell you, people say shit to me that's just like, oh, abortion, gun control. Like, who fucking cares? You know, I have to stop myself now from screaming it. Well, like I have Tourette's.
Yeah, some people, that's all they have, though, and that's all that, you know, Herman had. He had the radio, and he had his news, and he had, you know, what was going on in the world that day. And I think that's what a lot of people, you know, that's what a lot of people's situations are. They just don't have anything else to keep them occupied that they take enjoyment in.
I was gonna say, like, you know, you and I and all of our friends, we have this.
Yeah, we have a hobby, something to keep ourselves busy.
But it's not just that. Like, you know, you and I get on a podcast and we talk about technology. You and I get on a podcast and we talk comic book stories. We talk about all kinds of stuff. We get on the Metal Hammer of Doom and pull our dicks out. You know, we talk about that. Like, that's your dick. Well, that's my dick. Well, we have dicks. And that's 2 hours of the Metal Hammer of Doom. Oh, look, a music video. Okay, well, back to talking about dicks now. But that's what we do, and we have that, and we treasure it, and we value it, and we keep coming back to do it because it's important to us. But a lot of people don't have this, and so there are opportunities. And when I'm talking, what is this I'm talking about? Not the content; it's the engagement. For an hour or two, I sit with my friend, and we talk about all those things I just said.
Right.
You know,
right.
I get on this with another friend, and we talk about movies and finance and, you know, all that stuff. We talk about the culture. You know, I get on with Alexis and I talk about whatever with her. I talk about, you know, I get on with Evan Bevins and we talk about comic books. And it's funny the amount of like studies out there, like men have difficulties like maintaining friendships in adulthood for one reason or another. And here we all are, you know, through the magic of the internet, from all over the world, you know, Canada, Japan, America, Utah. It's its own country. As I told Robert yesterday. Yeah. Is we have friendships and we have conversation and we have engagement that a lot of people just don't have. But I think about like how podcasts got popular, and you especially now with StreamYard and being able to put your friend in a little box that you can see him in, how much more this has grown, and not because anything have anything valuable to say. It's because people are looking for engagement, they're looking for friendship.
Right.
But when you didn't have that, and all you had was Walter Winchell yelling at you through the radio, Mr. and Mrs. America, and then and then it's like you just want that engagement. You want that person to bat the ball back at you, and your family won't. And so you go to your neighbors, you go to your coworkers, you go to anyone, please see me as a human being. Please talk to me. And sometimes people don't know how to engage with other people without fighting with them.
All right.
Okay, let me tell you something. We've been doing this, just the Radulich and Broadcasting Network in its current form, 2011-ish. Metal 401 ground and pound radio till now, so 2011. How many people came into this and the only way they knew how to communicate with each other was picking fights with them? And how many years have we spent beating that out of people?
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to do this without picking fights. You have to be able to have a discussion without being an asshole. But that's us actively. That's me actively like, no, like I'm not going to allow this. You can't be a jerk off. And and so many other people, they don't know not to do that, and it's just a lot of people fighting with each other because they don't know how else to communicate. But they need that they need that communication. That's all they know.
Yeah. You ready for some show and tell?
Let's show it. Pull it out and show it to me, Big Daddy.
This will go quick. We've talked a lot about what really the driving factors. Oh boy. What the driving factors of this series was. So just let me get in here.
Real quick, as you're unzipping and pulling it out. Where would you rank this among the other David Simon shows? You personally, Jesse Starcher.
Oh gosh. I it's probably going to be in the bottom 5.
Better or worse than We Own This City?
Oh, We Own This City was actually, aside from some of there was the one part that we hated where the lady just came. It sounded like they were just talking.
It was the civil rights attorney.
Right. Okay. So I would probably give it above We Own This City, but John Bernthal carries a lot of that, and we don't have John Bernthal here, But I tended to like this more than that, just because it's going to get points taken away from it because of the civil rights attorney and how boring that part was. I like this. I like the show. I started it Saturday, I want to say, got through about 3 episodes real quick, and then watched 1 episode, and then jammed the other 2 in tonight. And each episode to me was gripping, and I was really like trying to figure out what's going to happen next. Last episode really good, where they take the trek down to Kentucky to try and get that.
Yeah. I would say it would have been the worst if not for Homicide. I know you love Homicide, and that's like, sacrilege to you, but I like this more than I like Homicide. All 3 seasons of Homicide are at the bottom of this list for me. But that's because for me, the David Simon stuff is so good. It's hard to build. It's like, it's like your least favorite child.
Yeah, right. Right. You're picking stuff that it's all good. It's just, you got to try and rank it.
Yeah. It's like, The Wire is obviously at the top. No surprise there. Then The Corner, then Treme. Generation Kills towards the bottom. I would say
that
Show
was
Me a Hero. Right. Yeah. The Deuce. The Deuce is in my top 5. So it's like The Wire, The Corner, Treme, The Deuce, Show Me a Hero. Those are my top 5. Like my bottom 5. Homicide, this, We Own the City, Generation Kill. I think that's everything.
Okay. It's a good list. It's a good list.
I want to see something for 1 second. Before you get into do pull up your show and tell and whatever, but I want to make sure I got everything. All right, so Homicide, The Corner, The Wire, Generation Kill, Treme, Show Me a Hero, The Deuce, Plot Against America, We Own the City. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So yeah, top 5 is that's about right. Top 5 is what I thought it was, and then the bottom 4 is what I think it is. That's how I would rank this. And so, like I said, only because I don't buy into the anti-Trump hysteria, because I don't buy into any anti-president hysteria, and you kind of need that to truly enjoy this show, and it's just not there for me. I much prefer to show me a hero. Like if I'm gonna be given a sort of wonky political show, I would rather see the inner workings of the politicians and the political discourse than my dad, but the Jew version, yelling at one of my cousins. All right. There he is.
Yeah,
Jewy
that's our
Jewy Mythlocks on Salt Bagel.
Herman 11. Yeah, we've talked ad nauseum about Herman here. So this is Zoe Kazan playing Bess Levin. And
yes, do you remember her from The Deuce?
I enjoyed her portrayal. Yes. It's funny because I got about 2 episodes in and I was like, I know she's been in another David Simon thing. What was it?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it wasn't too long ago that I watched it. She was Frankie's wife?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, great portrayal of Bess here. Very, emotional.
She's so funny, this character, because it's very much like, hey, it's getting a little rough out there. Let's move to Canada while we still can. No, we got to stay and fight 5 years later. Listen, everything's on fire and Jews are dead. All right, I guess we'll move to Canada. It's too fucking late now, you asshole. Like,
it's too late.
One of my common phrases that I stole from one of my friends, and this is a real life thing that happens. So it's funny. It's a funny thing to steal. It's kind of like the your pig is filthy thing that you make fun of me for. But we were talking. My friends and I are all talking one day, and something happens, and Pete tried to make a point about something, and then something else happened, and he was just like, "And nobody listens to Pete," and nobody listens to Pete with the jazz hands was the funniest thing I'd seen in a while, and I've ripped that off, and I have been yelling "nobody listens to Pete" for 20 years now. Whenever the situation calls for it's either nobody listens to Pete, or if Woody had gone to the police, this would have never happened. And
yes.
And if there's any character that embodies the nobody listens to Pete thing, it's her, because she was the voice of reason to this entire fucking show, and no one listened to her. No one gave a shit what she had to say.
Well, it's indicative of the time too. I mean, this is 1940s. And nobody got a woman back then. Nobody's listening to women back then, and that's what makes her character pretty interesting. Where she's trying to stand as a firm mother for her family. She's trying to stand by her man, but she's trying to get through to this numbskull that things are bad. And he just will not listen. So she can't do much other than just be like, okay. But when she finally, there's a couple moments that she has, like when she smacks the shit out of her kid, because he tells his dad that he's worse than Hitler. I mean, my goodness, that's some pretty.
And he walks out of the house. It's like, I'm fucking done. There's no getting through.
I'm waiting.
You were too stupid for words, and I'm gonna go now. And so, and then she like fucking tags in and hits him.
Yeah, you think it's going to be like this tender moment where the kid's kind of standing there and she's just going to be like, look, your father. No, she smacks the shit out of him. And she's like, look.
And rightly so, because can we not forget that Hitler caused the mass killing of millions of people? Right. This guy disagrees with you. But it's a poignant moment, because how many of us have gone through that lately? Like, how many false comparisons to Hitler get made in a single day now?
Oh yeah, it's inevitable.
And the gravity of the final solution seems to be utterly lost on people, and I really need to hammer that home. The guy and his cohorts organized a genocide. There's not that much that goes on in the day-to-day life of most people that's worse than organizing a very structured genocide. Can we please not lose sight of that? Because that seems obvious. But if it's like, you didn't give me all the sauces for my chicken McNuggets, you're worse than Hitler. Hang on. Not having your ranch and tangy buffalo sauce is not worse than genocide. These are false equivalencies. Words have meaning. This isn't fucking. This is. I brought this up recently, but like everyone everyone should read, and beyond reading, specifically what you should do is put down your fucking Harry Potter and your Hunger Games books, you people, and pick up George Orwell's 1984. Because that's the kind of thing he talked about. And Jesse, God is my witness. You want to, you know, it's like, well, if you're not like motivated by the whole Trump thing, what are you motivated for? 1984 by George Orwell. I fucking hate the world we live in right now because we're living in the world he described in the fucking 50s.
Right.
Keep going, but I want to make sure I'm right about that because, you know, I'm so smart. You know, fucking wrong year in the book that the book was written.
Well, the other moment that she has is when she finally breaks and she tells her husband after he gets beat at a political rally. I can't do this.
It was published in 1949. That was close.
You were close. Very close.
Yeah.
But yeah, when she tells her husband when he comes home and he's bleeding from the top of his head, and she's like, I can't do this anymore. I am going to leave you. I mean, that is her breaking point, and it's powerful.
Oh, the scene before, she's like, don't go. He's like, well, what am I supposed to do? Stand here and do nothing? And he goes, and rabble-rousers kick the shit out of him.
Right. She's been dealing with politics tearing her family apart for, you know, years. And now
she's Evelyn's sister. She's Winona Ryder is her sister, and Winona Ryder is the Uncle Tom. It's a hell of a position to be in.
Right. Right. Yeah, great performance. So up next, here we have Alvin, portrayed by Anthony Boyle. We kind of talked about him a good bit already. But yeah, you know, essentially, I mean, he had right here, this picture right here is where he had everything lined up, where he was the driver for that rich Jewish man who was like, yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll send you it was some college. And at one, he was too proud. Like, he finally got sick of, well, number one, he was sick of the person that he was working for, who was clearly as respected as that guy was. He was using he was just not a good guy. And he finally had enough and told him to go fuck himself. And that's when he signed up to be for a king and country. But regardless, he's clearly he's a conflicted character. When he loses his leg, you know, he feels ashamed, comes back to live with Herman and Bess, and I think he ends up just leaving, but he's being trailed by the G-Men. I do want to bring this up because this hit me while I was watching this series. You know, this is an alternate history take on things. He didn't come back a war hero. You didn't have that because there was no war for.
He came back a traitor.
Yeah. And that's something that I was like, you know what? All these people that were coming back injured, you didn't have, you know, the parades for these people coming back home from defending their country.
I got an equivalency for you. Imagine you're a farmer in South Carolina and it's before this, and it's about the time of the Civil War. You don't have necessarily slaves. You didn't have slaves. You didn't take part in slavery. You have a tobacco farm in South Carolina. Who doesn't? But your land, this land is your land. This land is my land. And your land is now at war with all those folks north of the Macy-Dixie line. And it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna go into the service. I'm gonna fight for God and country because my country is under attack. It's not really about what I think and what I believe. It's not about slavery or not slavery. It's about duty. I have a duty to my country to fight for it. And so you do. And you're in the Confederacy and you fucking lose. And now you're a fucking traitor to your country.
Right. He didn't do
anything wrong. Yeah. He just happened to be on the side that lost. But everything up to that point was he was a patriot. And because you're on the losing side. You're not a patriot anymore. You're a traitor, and nothing else has changed. That sucks.
Right. Next up, Sandy.
Yep.
So we talked a good bit about Sandy. You know, he's old enough to start to form his own opinions in regards to politics, and a big fan of Lindy, a big fan of Charles Lindbergh. And you know, the plane would pass over the house, and he would run, and you know, he gets caught up in believing everything that Lindbergh is. He's a hero. He would never do this to the Jews at all.
Well, aside from that, imagine, you know, you're this group of people, and because you're a part of this group, no one cares who you are as a person. You're just not liked. Right. Imagine being black in this country. Right. Educated, well-spoken, moral, compassionate. Nothing about you is any different than any good man that you live in the community with. But you're black and therefore bad.
Right.
And what if you could be something else? What if you could not be black anymore? And that's kind of Sandy's story. Is he's like, it sucks to be Jewish because nothing else about me matters. No matter how talented I am, no matter how compassionate I am, no matter how sweet I am, I'm Jewish first, and that's all anyone seems to care about. So maybe if I wasn't Jewish anymore, I could actually get on in this world and have a life and have people like me. And that's kind of his argument to his dad. It's why he wanted to do Just Folks, which is the program where they, you know, put kids with farmers for a summer. It's like, I just want to be liked for me. Who doesn't want to be liked for who they are and not what they are?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I sympathize with his story.
Yeah. Next up, our young Master Philip, I think is his name here, portrayed by Azzy Robertson, which, by the way, oh my goodness, who was it that
This
played?
is the most awkward run I've seen since The Flash.
Caleb Malice played Sandy, by the way. But anyway, yeah. So this is Master Philip here. He's a, you know, young boy, and this is the real like face of how somebody who has no idea what in the world is going, which was probably me about, I don't know, 5 years ago. So I was probably this kid. they don't care really much about politics. They're just a young kid absorbing everything. Why is dad mad? You know, why, what happened with Lindbergh? Why don't mommy like Lindbergh? And, you know, this kid has to try and absorb all this stuff. And it's just like, what kind of impression is the world going to leave on him? And he finally starts to have an opinion when he finds out that they're going to move him to Kentucky, and he wants this not to happen. So he goes and talks to his aunt, and he convinces her not to send them to Kentucky, but they end up sending the family that live below them to Kentucky. One of his, I wouldn't call him his friend, but you know, it's a kid about his age and they know each other pretty well. The other kid thinks he's his friend. But then he realizes what he actually got them to be sent to. And it's not good.
It's tragic.
It is a tragedy. All right, here you go, Mark.
All right. Best performance of the entire show. Winona Ryder
Winona Ryder playing Evelyn Finkel.
Dude, the great tragedy of Winona Ryder is that by now people have forgotten that she was in like Beetlejuice, and you know, she was in some of these other movies that when she was young in her career. So she's in this in the year of our Lord 2020, and she's the best performance. She gives the, besides maybe John Turturro, she gives the best performance of the entire show. The shit Winona Ryder does with her face, you know, where she has this like, she's just a ball of conflict, you know, conflicting emotions, and it's all in her face. It takes a lot, I think, to create a full-bodied performance, and Winona Ryder just gives a class in how to do that in her performance here. She's so good in this. Yeah. a masterclass in creating performance, creating a character. She's the best thing about this show. I kind of wish the show was more about her than it was about Herman. She's so good in this, and like, it's so funny because like you don't necessarily see her necessarily as an opportunist at first, and then it becomes very clear that she is, and then she gets called out on it, and you just see her entire fucking ego snap. And then my favorite bit is after they've dragged John Turturro away, and they, you know, and they're the world beneath them is crumbling, and they are falling into the political abyss. And she like runs to Zoe, I think it's Zoe Katan. She runs to her sister, who we talked about already, and she's like, "You gotta hide me." And he goes into this cockamamie, you know, thing about Charles Lindbergh and blackmail and the Germans and all of that. And fucking Zoe Katan's like, "Get the fuck out of here!" Like, you have made our you are a traitor. You're a race traitor. You're a useful idiot. You have made the world infinitely worse than it was before. You were instrumental in all of that. I'm not giving you fucking cover. Go fuck yourself. It's great. And like, and she has like, do you remember when Ric Flair showed up on Raw and Vince McMahon's whole world came crumbling down and he was like holding onto his ear like a child? That was Winona Ryder in that scene. It's awesome.
Yeah,
she's really good in this.
Yeah, and you know, as a character, you kind of, I don't know, I don't want to blame her for what she did.
Why?
Well, number one, she had the best of intentions. It's not like she just went into it blissfully thinking, okay, you know, nothing's going. No, I'm going to go into this with just illusions of being hitched with one of the most powerful men in Washington, D.C. No, she believed that there was going to be a change. The rabbi believed that there was going to be a change. He thought he was going to be an instrument in that change. She thought this was all very good. I mean, on this, when you look at it right there on the face of things, like the Just Folks program was actually a decent idea. Let's get these kids some exposure to the middle of the United States. Now, granted, there are some problems, especially in the era of the 40s, with some anti-Semitic and racist things that are happening out there. But honestly,
remember an hour ago when I said that Judaism is a race, not just a religion. It was about Just Folks was about subverting the Jewish traditions. Let's make these people more American. But with every subsequent generation that you do that, you lose everything that makes you a distinct individual. You know, make everything.
Yeah, but that's not what they said. Obviously, they didn't come out and say that, right?
No,
the program
but that's what happens,
right? But the other thing is that it's not a. It's a situation where these kids also get the opportunity to show others their beliefs, and also get in exposure on the other side of things is a good thing too. You as insular as you want to keep people, you can't. I understand the melting pot argument and that they tried to make here, where it's like just get everybody so they know everybody, and hey, maybe we can all get along if we understand where another person is coming from.
I can't remember what movie it is, but there's a character in a movie similar, you know, similar time period where it's like, we're in America now, speak American. You know, it's very much like don't do the thing from the old country. We're not there anymore. We left there. We left there because we would die if we stayed.
Yeah.
So be grateful to your new country by acting more like your new countrymen, and less like the old country. And it's not that I don't see that argument. I mean, I can argue both sides of this. I think I just tend to favor the side that goes, maybe don't pave over culture and make it a parking lot, which is weird because I'm usually the guy saying pave over everything and make it a parking lot. I don't know. Maybe in my old age, I'm appreciating, I think, because I feel like I'm surrounded by people who don't appreciate their culture. And they are filling up their life with bullshit. to cover for the fact that they have none. They have nothing of value to hold on to, so they fill their life up with bullshit. And maybe it's getting to me. So maybe there's some projection here. Maybe, I look at the show and I looked at what that was, and it just reminds me that there are people in my life that I think allow superfluous distraction to become more important than the actual important things. And I don't know, it hurts me. It makes me frustrated with people and makes me not want to interact with them.
Okay. I get it. That's my reason as to why I didn't blame her totally. I thought she was brought in and she thought she was going to be. Now, I mean, the fact that she danced with a Nazi, okay, yeah, you're making some pretty bad decisions here. But again, it's all in the guise of politics. She explains that they're trying to. You want to diplomatically try to assuage these people to stop doing what they're doing without being involved with the war. If that's your goal, then this is really the only thing you can do. Go ahead.
Have you heard of the country of Saudi Arabia?
I've heard of them.
Yeah.
I heard about Wales, Africa.
Yep, right next door. You may have heard Saudi Arabia has some difficulties with their women. Like not letting them drive cars and shit. There may be a beheading or two every once in a while. And there's a joke amongst us combat sports people about the UFC and the WWE and boxing doing events in Saudi Arabia because Saudi Arabia wants to become the entertainment capital of the world. They're throwing out a lot of money to bring in big time sports events and, make the rest of the world make themselves look modern and forward thinking and progressive. And everyone likes to bring up the fact that yes, but by and large your country hasn't really changed in terms of civil rights. And so they refer to it, so whenever there's like a WWE show, it's always referred to as like Saudi blood money. When Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou fought over there, it was like, oh, this is the blood money fight. And that's to me the modern equivalent of dancing with Von Trapp, Von Truppenribbon, whatever the fuck the guy's name was.
Von Kraus.
Yeah, Von Kraut. I came here to kill Krauts. I can get away with that slur. That slur no one's gonna be bothered by. But yeah, she like the political reality of doing some unsavory things in the name of progress. So, entertaining the Germans and bringing them to America, sending the WWE to do Crown Jewel in Saudi Arabia.
Right.
I can argue both sides.
Well, I do declare it's time to talk about the most Southern rabbi I've ever heard in my entire life.
Dude, when he talks, did you hear Foghorn Leghorn like I did? I say, give me some lox on bagels. What the fuck?
John Turturro's performance was so fantastic. But yes, I when he spoke, because I think he said he was from South Carolina, if I remember correctly. But it's just I wasn't expecting this
to come out of his mouth.
Yeah, right.
Is it John Turturro that's in the Transformers movies where like one of them he comes? What movie am I thinking of where John Turturro like walked in and he has a giant heart on in his sweatpants?
I have no idea.
Okay, I feel like it was like a Jennifer. Jennifer, what the fuck's her name? The dancer, the singer.
Jennifer Lopez.
Yeah, Jennifer Lopez. It was like a Jennifer Lopez movie where like John Turturro like walked in and he has like a giant heart on in the sweatpants. Like that guy. That guy is Rabbi Foghorn Leghorn in this show. It's great.
So this unfortunately he becomes placed in a position of power, just like you said, like a Jewish Uncle Tom for the United States government. He has the president's ear, you see, and he is by far he's not going to mistreat the Jews in any way. When those two sit down across from each other at the table, when Herman and Rabbi Dingelsdorf here, can't remember his name. When the rabbi sit down across when they sit down across from each other at the dinner table, I was just like, oh man, it is going to be on. And you got the Southern gentleman, and you have Herman.
My God, would you like some
not
tea?
Afraid.
I'm gonna start next time I want to tell someone to go fuck themselves. I'm gonna be like, would you like some tea?
I'm
fine.
I'm fine. But yeah, watching him kind of fall from grace, when Lindbergh goes missing, they start pointing the finger at him at being the person who had, oh goodness, what was the person they compared it to? Rasputin. They compared to Rasputin for talking to the first lady, and the first lady would never come out and say anything because at her request, she's like, I need you to speak for me on these matters. But then the press was like, well, how come she isn't saying these things? How come you're always coming out here and saying these things? But yeah, then his fall from grace, and it's just kind of like the whole cockamamie story that you were talking about. I couldn't tell which one made that up. Like, was it my goodness, was Evelyn that came up with that, or was it the rabbi that came up with that? They were trying to save face, essentially, and they were also trying to save Lindbergh, the Lindbergh administration from they're blackmailing. The plot was, or what they had said was that Lindbergh's baby had been kidnapped and replaced with a corpse by the Germans, and the Germans raised and blackmailed Lindbergh in order to follow along with their policies. That was the big conspiracy that they came up with, to try and explain everything away and try and save face in some way. And it just doesn't go anywhere. Yeah. But yeah, he was a fun character to watch on screen. And
I was a little impatient with him at times. Like, he's the second best performance in this entire thing because I could separate my own sort of like picadillos about preferences about performances. On the other hand, I do declare that the Jews in America enjoy lox on a salted bagel with water from the major metropolitan areas of New York. Dude, get the fuck on with it. Like, I'm screaming at my phone.
Let's go.
Yeah, speed this up, guys. Yes. I'd like to tell you, Justice Starcher from Marietta, Ohio, that comic books are full of colorful pictures featuring superheroes with spectacular powers that they use to save babies from danger. Babies are small children that fall from the uterus of a woman.
I do declare. All right, next up, I threw him on here. This was, oh my goodness. He was in the Deuce. I can't remember his name now.
Oh yeah, he's Harvey from the Deuce.
Harvey from the Deuce. He was essentially, I think he was his cousin.
He plays Jewish businessman in this show.
Alvin goes to work for him after his injury, and then he proceeds to fire him because the FBI came in and said, hey, this guy you've got working for you is a communist, and blah, 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 blah. But yeah.
Can we go back to John Turturro for a moment? Did they bring in Refn to direct his scenes?
That is possible.
I declare. Can we get like 20-minute pregnant pauses between each word?
Oh, it's disgusting.
This show is actually 3 episodes long, but the running time goes 6 episodes because we have to get all of John Turturro's dialogue.
Because John Turturro's dialogue.
I'm sorry. Move on.
And you're all right. This was the last picture. I just kind of wanted to talk about this poor young chap.
Every Jewish kid ever.
All he wants to do is play some chess. I mean, come on. Jacob Laval playing Selden Wynn's Wishnow. Wishnow is the name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, ends up getting sent to Kentucky, essentially taking the place of the Levins, and his mom gets killed by the Klan. And I will tell you that I was really emotionally involved in this poor kid when he called up Elizabeth Beth's and was like, my mom's not here and
Oh my
she's
God.
never come home. And I'm like,
have you ever been just trapped on a phone with somebody and like you don't want to hang up on them, you want to help them, but like you're helpless. Like all you can do is talk to them and you're just trapped on that phone.
Yes.
I have seen a lot of horror movies since doing Damn You Hollywood and Triple Feature and and podcasts, whatever, but there's nothing more horrifying than that woman trapped on that phone with that child.
Mm-hmm.
What a nightmare.
Yes. She wants to get off that phone, but anyway, yeah, of course they're really concerned about the fact that his mom is not coming home, and that's the only adult that lives with him. So luckily they're able to contact the farm that Sandy went to go stay, and they went over and got him. But then that of course leads into the trip down to Kentucky, and man, was there some fucked up sights on the way down and on the way back home from Kentucky. Like when the family is in the car and they are just roll up on a business burning with the Ku Klux Klan hanging out outside talking with the cops. I mean, geez,
as casual as the day is long. Like, yeah, that's what we do here. Listen, we can't have Jews setting up successful businesses. What will the neighbors think? What do we do about? Listen, we have to protect the white women from successful business, Jewish businesses.
I understand.
Yes.
I think that is all my show and tell, and I hit the wrong button here. Let me get this one right here. I need to stop presenting. That's what I need to do. Here we go. All right,
well, Justin.
So there you go. I mean, I enjoyed the show. I had a good time.
Sure. Look, it's not. I think what I was saying before was it's not my favorite, and and I had to kind of explain why. It's one of those where I recently listened back to our review of Psychic Warfare. And you were talking about like meeting. Jesse was talking about meeting Neil Fallon, and I said on that show, and it kind of bears repeating here because it could definitely be applied to David Simon. He seems like the kind of person who, if you ever disagreed with him, would lose his fucking mind. Like it doesn't. I love David Simon to death, but I watch shows like The Plot Against America. And I get the feeling that like David Simon doesn't talk to a lot of people who disagree with him. He's very much in the bubble. And that's fine. When David Simon makes a lot of entertaining shows that I find enjoyable. But The Plot Against America is probably the best example I can think of a David Simon show where the expectation is everyone's going to watch this thing and agree with, the point of view. And it's like, I just don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking before you got kicked off the show that David Simon kind of reminds me of my remarks about Neil Fallon, where I don't want to meet this guy because he seems like the kind of guy that nobody ever disagrees with. And then it's fucking mine. He won't know what to do with you.
Yeah.
So Jesse.
Mark.
Early part of last year, I pitched you the very first Radulich and Broadcasting Network sort of book done as a podcast, where every chapter was going to be a show that David Simon produced. And so I called it From the Corner to the Deuce, an examination of the great works of David Simon. And we started with the first season of Homicide that he worked on, that he executive produced. And went all the way to The Plot Against America. And in the middle of all that, because it was contemporaneous at the time, for my birthday, we talked We Own This City, or we would have ended with We Own This City. And I did this in part because I don't know if people know this or not, but I'm a huge fan of The Wire. And I wanted an excuse to talk about it because we tend to not talk about old shows, especially once I got busy with my social life. There wasn't a lot of time to look back on the shows of yore. It was always whatever new bullshit was coming on Disney Plus or whatever. but I said I need to take time to talk about this because I've talked about the show so many times. I've used as a reference in all these other reviews. Maybe I should dedicate some time to this. But I also wanted to really examine. I mean, that's not just a catchy title. I wanted to examine the works of David Simon. I think his body of work is worth looking at and seeing what we can pull out of it. What does David Simon tell us about the nature of man and these, in our existence? What is David Simon trying to tell us with with all these different television shows? And I could have asked anybody. I wouldn't, but I could have asked anybody to do this with me. Instead, I said you, one, because you don't seem to have a life, so you're always willing to podcast.
Yeah.
When you're not watching Everyone Loves Raymond with your wife, you're always there. But I always enjoy talking to you. You always have really interesting insight. When I pitched you From the Corner to the Deuce, what were your thoughts? What made you decide to do this besides you're madly in love with me and will do anything I ask of you besides edit your fucking comic book podcasts?
Well, I mean, really, I'm a simple man. I'm a simple man.
With a simple plan.
Oh, yes, sir. You said David Simon. I was like, okay, well, I kind of know who that is. Tell me more. And you were like, well, The Wire. And I was like, oh, yeah, I do need a reason to finish that. So that might be that would help. Oh, and also we're going to start out with Homicide: Life on the Street. And I'm like, okay, all right, now I'm in. So yeah, I didn't know what I was going to get into because I didn't know David Simon very much from other than when you've mentioned him and what I've seen from some of the shows. But I was down to watch something and discuss it because I know that you and I can usually find something to talk about in some of the barest material sometimes. So yeah, that was my initial thought. I knew I was going to have a chance to watch something with you once a month. You didn't say, hey, we're going to do this one season each week, and I appreciate that much. We were doing this once a month, and that's not a hard commitment to make.
What I got out of this was that David Simon definitely has some frustrations with the mechanics of political life, and how it affects the daily life of all of us everyday people. He has some concerted opinions about policies that some people see the value in, that he has seen up close and has decided that these are these are not working out as well as one would hope, specifically the drug war. He spent a couple of different shows dealing with that. But I think like Show Me a Hero, Treme, to a different degree, Generation Kill, this, Plot Against America, he very much looks at the internal problems of government and how those problems resonate outward into the lives of everyday people, and how people just trying to live their life, take care of their feed, shelter their families, pursue the American dream, can't even get out of the starting block half the time because government sort of fails them at every turn. And so it's like, I almost think that David Simon sees the United States as like this ship, and the ship's got just holes in it and it's sinking, and the people on the boat can't get organized fast enough and do the right thing and stop the leaks. And so people, instead people just run around crazy on the boat. People jump off the boat. Some guy just doesn't even know what's happening. He's fishing on the boat while it's sinking. And it's just like, and David Simon sort of looks at that ship and goes, I have some thoughts about how we could fix the holes. Maybe I'll make a show about it. I'll make a show about the frustration of watching people not be able to stop this sinking ship and what some ideas might be to fix it. So maybe it doesn't stink.
I don't foresee a lot of his. I mean, maybe in the long run, he's expecting there may be some inspiration from the shows so that a solution could be achieved. But I think a lot of what he spends his time on is showing you what the problem is. Yeah. This is the problem. How are we going to fix it? I may not have an answer, but here's how it's affecting everybody, and what, maybe we should take some action and try to do something about it. The corner was all about that. I mean, you watch these people suffer. You watched, you watched people go through drug addiction, and people were losing their lives. People were trying to get straight and can't. And you watched how things failed. There weren't answers at all in that show. There were no answers. All it was like, look at this. This is the problem. What are we going to do? And somebody like, me sitting down, and I definitely don't, we have the seedy side of Marietta, but it's nothing like what you see in the corners of Baltimore. And that kind of opens people's eyes. And the more people you get to see what the problem is, the better chance you may have somebody who can present a solution. So I believe that David Simon does a lot of that. He's like, here's the problem, folks. What can we do? It's up to you to try and figure it out. So, but yeah, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. On sort of the lighter side of things, I've really enjoyed the last year and a half, 2 years. One, I got to talk to my friend for 2 hours, an hour to 2 hours, about some of the best television ever produced in the last 20 years. That nobody gives a shit about. It's really funny because it's like, we went back and we looked through these shows, and I look at the numbers, and some of the shows do better than others. But it's definitely one of those where I definitely wasn't doing this for the views. I was doing it because I wanted to spend time with my friend talking about something that I'm passionate about. And I'm passionate about these shows, even the ones that I don't like as much.
Yeah.
When I go back and I listen to all of our podcasts, I am my own biggest fan.
That's good.
a healthy ego. But the ones I listen to on repeat, besides some of the old source materials, specifically for the gag reels, are this series of shows. I have listened to us talk about The Wire and Treme like 100 times. And without hurting anyone's feelings or without patting myself too much on the back, I think these are some of the best discussions I've had in the almost 20 years I've been podcasting. And look, love Robert to death, and Damn You Hollywood has definitely produced some amazing conversations. But Andrew Graham made a point of telling us, is like, you be proud, this is the best thing you guys have ever done. And in no small part because it got us thinking about the issues of the day, and you and I were able to have a good back and forth about those issues. And I've had other people listen to some of these shows and give me feedback, and they're like, wow, this is not stuff that I think about on an ongoing basis, and you guys definitely made me think about things, which is probably why no one listens to it. So
that's all good stuff to hear, man. That's really good. I think, I'm again, simple man, humble podcaster. I'm just sitting over here having a good time talking about stuff that I've watched with somebody. But I think our discussions when it comes to these are real life issues. We could try and extrapolate as much as we can out of a Mark Russell comic book, but Razor Ball's still going around killing people, and it's kind of tough to kind of pull that into reality sometimes. Yeah, this isn't hard. This is something that you don't have to go far to see some type of an issue that David Simon is trying to bring light to. And discussing it's important too. It's other people may not have the opportunity to sit down and talk like we do. And getting the chance to hear somebody talk about it again, if we're watching the shows that they're not, we're at least giving them the opportunity to think, well, maybe I should watch that show, or maybe I should give that issue some time a day and think a little bit more about it. Which is great. I think we're doing ourselves a duty here. We're doing the due diligence and bringing the content out there and putting eyeballs on things. So, and I would rather have not done it with anybody else other than you, Mark Radulich. So there you go.
Not even Evan Bevins.
Not even. Evan Bevins talking about the plot against America. I don't know how that would go. I mean, there would be so many puns. I don't know. It would. I don't know.
I'm getting out of here. So let me first say thank you. No, you didn't have to do this. This is an hour, 2 hours away from your family. An hour to 2 hours, you can't play Marvel Snap. Work on spreadsheets, do whatever it is you do. Edit a comic book podcast.
I do that quite a bit.
Play. You know what? Play with your girlfriend, the artificial intelligence.
Oh, she's getting massaged every day.
Yes, I'm sure she is. How do I deal with my passive aggressive friend? ChatGPT. Whisper sweet nothings into my ear about this idiot that I have to deal with. So first, let me in all seriousness, let me say thank you. I don't think I do this enough, but nobody has to do this with me. And if everyone stops, I'm going to be very lonely. Especially now. So first, thank you.
For sure.
There was a million other ways you could have been spending your time. You chose to spend 2 hours putting up with me over talking you, cutting you off, making dick jokes, and occasionally saying something salient about the issues of our day. So bless you, brother. Thank you for doing this with me.
My pleasure. And it also gave me a reason to kind of sit down with the wife and watch some things too. So
what was her take on a lot of this? Besides, why does Mark make you do this?
Oh, well, okay. So she watched The Corner with me. There were a few shows she dropped out of. I could not watch The Deuce with her. Okay. I'm just sorry.
So much penis. And Mindy was like, no, thank you. I'm a penis gal, TV or not.
I think she would have watched it with me if we could have figured out a way to watch it in private, but there's just no way. There are too many episodes and 3 seasons of that. But I mean, she's always down. I told you before, her and I watched Homicide back in the day. So she's got a taste for these types of things. She did watch The Wire with me. We went through most of that. Generation Kill. She slept through about half of those episodes, but she made it through. But essentially her take, I didn't hear her complain at all. She always is a good soldier and watches these things with me. And we had some discussions. I can remember talking about The Corner with her and some of the Wire episodes. So it was nice to actually, it's Everybody Loves Raymond or something else usually. So usually we're either laughing or, we're definitely not talking about some really serious issues that our good friend David Simon is bringing to us very often. So it was an experience, that's for sure. I think we're, definitely, again, she's better for it. So
good. Anything else? I thanked you. I've enjoyed this look back at David Simon stuff. Some of the stuff I had, like I said, most of the stuff I'd seen. I hadn't seen Generation Kill and I hadn't seen The Plot Against America, but everything else I'd seen either after it came out and caught up with it or saw it contemporaneously. So I'm kind of glad. It's like one of those. It's one of those things where I'm a completist and
dude, right.
And while these are not the same show, I can sit here and now say I have watched every single episode of every single David Simon show, and nobody cares. So that's good. I've
thought the same thing though. I could say that, hey, I experienced everything that David Simon at least had a hand in, or at least I feel like I did, and it was, it's a badge you can wear. A badge that at some point it's going to come up in conversation with somebody, and you're going to be like, well, I do have a podcast too.
Yep.
If you want to listen to it, well, if you don't want to, let me tell you about it.
So I did this when Pat, it's not the first series we've done. I've done the history of heavyweight boxing with Pat, and then we did the 4 Kings of Boxing. And when I was done with those, I created a whole Facebook page that now is the landing page for any boxing that we talk about. I'm going to make a Facebook page for this because I really wanted this to feel like a book. I'm not going to sit down and write a book. That's not who I am. I'm this guy. I'm a podcast guy. But I wanted this to feel, when I came up with this idea, it was very much like I want to write a book about examining all of David Simon's shows and what are the central themes, what is he talking about, what is this man passionate about, what does he have to say to the world, and we've done that now. We've created this book in audio form. So I'm going to make a Facebook page. I'm going to call it From the Corner to the Deuce, examining the great works of David Simon. And I'll put all the shows there, and I'll make a playlist on YouTube, and you can make a playlist for Spotify if you want.
Brilliant. I've already got it. I just got to add this show when it's done. So
yeah. And then there will be, the entire series will be there for people to enjoy. Maybe this is ahead of its time. Maybe, I'm sitting here like, nobody cares. And it's fine. Yeah, I wouldn't trade the hours I spent on this with you for anything. And I really mean that. But it also might be a case of maybe people didn't see it as we were doing it, but people will find it later on and go, hey, for almost 2 years, these two nitwits sat down for 2 hours at a time and I'll talk about something besides their dicks. It was great. And I'm going to tell a friend, like, hey, maybe don't watch the same stupid Marvel and Star Wars show. Maybe, watch these shows and listen to these two jackasses, talk about it. So, and if I can do that much, if I can contribute that much to the culture, then I'll have done my job and I can ride off into the sunset.
You are successful, sir. Successful.
Speaking of successful, my other love, Robert Winfrey and I, we talked Godzilla RAR -1 last night. Eric ran at it in my room and I was like, Jonas, you have to listen to my podcast. You did an awesome review of Godzilla -1. He was like, yes, father. Calls me father. So we did that yesterday.
Can I ask a question without spoilers? I mean, I don't know if you could tell me without spoilers, but
sure.
What the hell is -1? Like,
I'm not really sure why they call it -1.
Okay. All right, then. That's all I needed to know.
I'm sure Robert Winfrey's like, no, he's an idiot. I honestly like, I don't, because it's a prequel. I have no fucking clue.
All right. Is it a prequel?
I mean, it's Godzilla at the end of like World War II, I think.
Okay. All right. Well, then yes, that's probably like kind of like his year one, Batman year one.
Yeah, pretty much. Godzilla year one on the streets of Gotham. Rawr.
-1.
What are you? I'm Godzilla.
Rawr.
Tomorrow, speaking of Godzilla, Thursday. What fucking day it is? Thursday, Alexis Hayna will have Andrew Orozco and my son, Jonas, budding comedian, will be on to talk about Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, the Netflix cartoon. So that'll be fun.
Ooh, I almost wanted to watch that. I haven't had a chance yet.
Yep, I don't at all. But next week, we've got Napoleon on Damn You Hollywood, and that's Monday. And then, hey, you and I are back to do our annual Metal Hammer of Doom Christmas show. It's the Metal Hammer of Doom Jukebox. We're going to be looking at Tarja Turnen.
Oh, Tarja Bomb.
Oh, Tarja Bomb. We're going to look at Dark Christmas, and we're going to play some music videos, preferably, hopefully they revolve around Christmas music. I'm going to play Homo Christmas. What do you think about that, Jesse?
That's great. I can't wait to see the video. I hope it's just full of everything that happens in the song.
I'm going to ask you that night. I'm not going to ask you now. I don't want to spoil it. But that night, I'm going to ask you if you'll be my Christmas queer.
You've asked me that in the past. I think without hesitation.
Well, I'll keep asking until I get the answer. I'll keep asking until I get the answer I want. All right, Jesse, speaking of Christmas queers, what do you got going on your network?
Oh, my goodness. The Source Material Comics podcast. You can find that on any podcast catcher out there. Just do a search for it. We're hanging out on the W2M network. Listen, we have recently just recorded, it's me, Dean and Derry, talking about the Marvel Holiday Special from 1996. And we had some good discussions there. Mark, are you ready for this? I'm going to tell you something. I read that issue yesterday morning. All right. We talked about it and recorded it last night. I didn't know the story of Hanukkah until yesterday. 45 years. I had no idea. It was
how long have you hated Jews?
I know of Hanukkah. I know there's like some candles involved. I don't know what's going on there, but yes.
Please tell me you knew about Hanukkah before the Adam Sandler song.
Well, I mean, I can't even tell you what the lyrics are, but I know how I know kind of how it goes.
Jesse.
Yeah.
Goyam.
All right.
On your yarmulke. It's time
for Hanukkah.
So I learned get a harmonica on this happy Hanukkah.
I learned about Hanukkah through a story about Kitty Pryde visiting a church that was burned in her hometown of Deerfield, Illinois. So yeah, you can tune in and listen to me confess my ignorance as I do often on that podcast. And then hey, Snap Material is going to be dropping. Me and Evan are recording this week, so most likely it's going to be dropping next week. It's 4 or 5 episodes of me and Evan talking about Snap Material, that mobile game, Marvel's Snap, where and we're going to be talking previous season, this upcoming season. We're going to have our top five cards that best exemplify the Christmas spirit. How are we going to work that in? It's going to be fun. And then, of course, the Source Material Comics podcast. This today, if you would have tuned in today, you could hear Mark and I quickly talk about the Green and Swamp Thing. It went by rather quick.
Not a good pick on my part.
11 issues of Zack Snyder. No, not Zack Snyder. Scott Snyder.
Yeah.
Doing Swamp Thing stuff, and I mean it was okay, but Unique Paquette was actually the guy that did the art for that. Was at the con that I just went to with the guys from Kapow, which was pretty neat. A lot of people actually. I think Marco Rudy was right by him too, which was another artist that was part of the Swamp Thing. But anyway, yeah, you can check that out, and I think that's it. You can tune in to Kapow, the Pop Culture Podcast, if you like. You can hear me talking about movies on the recent episode. I think we were talking some movies and TV. I hop on there every once in a while. That is all my plugs.
Jesse.
Goyim. Is that how you say it?
Goyim, yes.
Goyim.
Goyim.
Shalmio Shalmazel.
Austin Pfeffer Incorporated. Jesse Bobola.
Tell me, Bobola.
You ever see Brokeback Mountain?
I have not seen Brokeback Mountain.
Well, here's a line from Brokeback Mountain. Relates to me, you and I. I can't quit you, Jesse Starcher.
There it is.
And you know what that means?
I do know what that means.
The band is getting back together this January.
That's right.
You, me, and God's favorite son, Ronnie Adams.
Ronnie Adams.
Of the
Screaming
Boy
Podcast.
Yes, on the Screaming Boy Podcast. Horse death. Beaten. You and I and Ronnie Adams, good to his mother, will be reviewing every single season of Sons of Anarchy. You know, kind of like what happened with Pat and I, where we did the boxing series. We did 2 of them. We did the history of heavyweight boxing, and then we did the 4 Kings. And then it was like, well, let's keep doing this. So, you know, the History of Boxing podcast was then formed, and, you know, it's continuing to go on this day when we have time to do it and when he doesn't bail on me. So, same thing here. No, you know, we're done with this series. The series is being put to bed, but why not keep looking at some quality television, you and I, and whatever other.
Why not?
Whatever other hanger on we can bring on with us. So first half of the year, you, me, and Ronnie, the band, we're going to be doing Sons of Anarchy, 1 season a month-ish. And then later in the year, Robert Winfrey, I can't quit you either, buddy. You're a part of this threesome, whether you like it or not. Speaking of threesomes no one wanted to be a part of. Him, and I will be reviewing Ash versus the Evil Dead.
Oh, that sounds exciting.
And then I think a year from now, I think the way that it played out between Sons of Anarchy and Ash versus Evil Dead, we had one month left over for me to shove in a 1 season of television, and I don't see it here. I could have sworn I was going to make you watch who's a whatsy? Vinyl. Yeah, Vinyl, which I don't see on here. So maybe I didn't. Maybe I didn't do that.
Not official if it's not on the schedule. So you better make it.
I know the West Wing. I know Andrew called the West Wing for 2025 because that's how far out I've scheduled. No shit. The West Wing. And then because I wanted to torch you. Yeah, okay. No, for some odd reason I put Vinyl in November. Oh, I know what okay, now I remember what I did that. So I put it in November to finish off 2025, but we still need a December 1 season of television, and I think I was going to let you pick because I picked everything up to this point. That's what happened.
Oh boy.
So you have a year, just started thinking about a season of television that you would like us to talk about.
Okay. Well, that's plenty of time.
So,
Plenty.
all right, folks. Yes. So, yes, Sons of Anarchy, and then Ash versus Evil Dead, and then whatever nonsense Jesse picks for the year of our Lord 2024.
Beautiful. My wife thanks you for Sons of Anarchy. I guarantee it.
Yeah, there's a chick who I'm friends with who has been saying, like, you know, just like I should be watching Sons of Anarchy. It was like her favorite show, or whatever. So I never watched it. You know, after The Shield, I kind of walked away from shows on FX for a while. So we'll see. We'll see how good it is. Folks, thank you for joining Jesse and I on this trip from the corner to the deuce and our review of The Plot Against America. For Jesse Starcher, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.